I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. You know, Oregon loves being first in the nation to do something, and we certainly are that when it comes to decriminalizing small amounts of drugs. Love it or hate it, Measure 110 is the law of the land in Oregon right now. And a lot of you have very strong opinions on whether it's the greatest thing ever or that it's going to lead to the downfall of civilization as we know it. So we thought it'd be fascinating to see the results from a state audit, the very first one, looking at whether the law is meeting its intended goals: less arrests for drugs, more treatment for addicts. The results are surprising, and it's part of our big story. Auditors are fascinating people to me. They love detail and structure and rules. They're excellent at carefully poring through data and pointing out what rules were not followed and how things could be fixed. And in this first audit of Measure 110, the auditors found a mess. They basically said, we can't really tell if it's working or not, so let's just say it's too soon to tell. That's really part of the title. But when it comes to the initial rollout of Measure 110, they had plenty to say about that. Here's the audits director, Kip Mamott.
We got off to a rough start. Some of this government by ballot initiative causes some problems, and it takes time to structure government properly, which can be frustrating. But auditors, we talk a little bit wonky about controls and governance and outcome measures, but you really have to have those in place to assess performance.
Did you catch those words? Controls and governance and outcome measures. They may sound a little bit wonky, but they are the tools that let you measure whether something is working or not. And he's saying that Measure 110, it had none of that. And as a result, they have no idea whether it's working, whether anyone is being helped, or whether any money is being wasted. And remember, $302 million from marijuana tax money was diverted to Measure 110 to help people deal with their drug addiction. One of the findings in the audit found that early on, $33 million in access care grants were awarded to get programs up and running. But little to no data was collected by the Oregon Health Authority, and auditors were not able to determine if the grants were effective. In fact, there's no data on how the funds were even spent. No data on whether they improved access to drug treatment or other programs. Those grants were the first dollars to go to organizations that offered a variety of drug treatment options. But the auditors are saying there's just no way to know if that money actually helped people with drug issues or not. The auditors wrote that the OHA said many of the organizations were small and new to the state health system, and that forcing them to report how the money was spent would be unduly burdensome. The auditors also criticized OHA for being way too hands-off with a group of people not qualified to run the program that handed out hundreds of millions of dollars. It was supposed to be done in 9 months. Instead, it took 2 years. That group is called the Oversight and Accountability Council, or OAC, as it's called in the report. The auditors wrote most OAC members lacked experience in designing, evaluating, and administrating a governmental grant application process. They also wrote that left on their own, the OAC set up a system requiring 240 points of information for each application, along with questions that required long responses. And that all contributed to the delay in issuing funds statewide. Here's the audit manager, Ian Green.
The Oversight and Accountability Council had developed a request for grant application process, and that was overly complex. It had too many elements that needed to be evaluated, too many reviews that needed to take place before they could make those funding decisions. And they didn't have the staff support from the OHA to get to those, review them, make recommendations. So that's what led to months-long delays.
The auditors also found potential conflicts of interest among those on the oversight group that awarded the money, noting that on several occasions, OAC members referenced personal knowledge rather than materials in the grant applications when making funding decisions. The auditors note the instances did not meet a statutory definition of conflict of interest, but may violate procedures for what materials should be considered. The auditors also looked at the special phone line set up for Measure 110. Under the law, people found with users' amounts of drugs in public can be fined $100, but the fine is dropped if they call a special Measure 110 hotline to talk about their drug use. Our reporting found most drug users found that a joke and ignored it, and the auditors backed that up. They found that during the first 15 months, the special hotline, with an entire staff hired just for the hotline, by the way, that hotline had a total of 119 calls with a cost of over $7,000 per call. 27 of those people actually wanted help. Auditors found another existing drug and alcohol helpline took 10,000 calls during that same time period. Auditors also said they were surprised to learn that no Measure 110 money is going to help people with drug issues who are in prison. They called it a real missed opportunity. Auditor Ian Green visited the women's prison in Wilsonville called Coffee Creek.
We went there to see the alternative incarceration program, which is an intensive residential 24/7 drug treatment program for adults in custody. And it was just very surprising to see the level of support and the programs that are provided to those inmates. But what was surprising to me was how few of them got access to that treatment. We've got over 12,000 adults in custody at the Department of Corrections. Over 7,700 currently have significant substance use disorders, and only a few hundred each year are getting access to these intensive treatment programs.
That is surprising, and it's hard to imagine a more efficient setting for drug treatment. I mean, these folks are already being housed and fed, and they would likely be very motivated to take part. The auditors also point out that the biggest risk to Measure 110 is the lousy data collection and reporting that's going on right now. They warn that unless that improves, it's going to be impossible to ever tell if Measure 110 is effective. By the way, the Oregon Health Authority does have a new director. He put out a response to this audit, and believe me, there's a lot more to the audit. But basically he said, yeah, those are all good points, and we're going to get working on all of that right away. So I guess that's good. Now, here's my take on this, my opinion. Oregon Secretary of State Shemia Fagan and several others today repeated that title of the audit of too early to tell, as in too early to tell if Measure 110 is working. That is a title that only a politician would love. How about this? How about the rollout of Measure 110 is a disaster? Or maybe Measure 110, where did the money go? Or, well, I could go on, but you get the point. The Secretary of State made it clear today that she supports Measure 110 and talked of her mother and brother's struggles with addiction. I think it's admirable that she's open about that and passionate about getting addicts help. I also suspect that's why the audit title is a bit soft. Regardless, my main reaction after reading all of this was, oh, for crying out loud! How could the state, the Oregon Health Authority specifically, be so asleep at the switch on this? How could they be so hands-off to let a group of untrained citizens try to figure out how to dole out hundreds of millions of dollars in a brand new program? Why not get in there and help them? How is it that no one thought to gather important data that showed, I don't know, how many drug users are getting help in Oregon? How many were not? How many programs were available before Measure 110 began, so we could see if it's working now, 2 years later? And why does this matter? Because there are a lot of people in our area with drug addiction issues, a lot of people living on our streets, and a lot of people living in houses and apartments and condos as well, and they all deserve help. If you can't track where the money went or how it's being used, you won't know whether anyone is getting better or maybe just feeling a little bit more comfortable in their addiction, or maybe not even touched by the money at all. Remember, this is diverted marijuana tax. It's money that used to go to Oregon schools and mental health treatment and police. It should be put to good use, and we should be able to track it. So the rollout of 110 is a mess, and it should be frustrating to you whether you voted for it or against it. Once again, another big state agency is asleep on the job, and somebody should be held accountable. But I doubt that's going to happen. Let's just hope the new OHA director really does follow through and put structures and controls in place so that we'll at least get a better idea of what's happening when the next audit comes out in 2 years. Well, that's my opinion. What's yours? You don't have to agree with me. I might be full of it. I don't think so, but it is possible. Feel free to let me know. The email is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a message on our phone line, 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you.